Greetings everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm your host Captain Rye, and today's YouTube video is a replay sent to me by Captain's Iron. Now Iron is in the Tier 7 British light cruiser, the HMS Fiji, and this is a Tier 7 maximum game that he's managed to find himself in. As the battle gets underway, it's the Two Brothers map and it's standard battle mode. So because it's standard battle mode, there's not a lot of direct action right at the beginning of the game. There are no caps to go after, and for the most part, nobody is suicidal enough to go up the center. There are only 2 destroyers in the game, one on each team, and there are aircraft carriers in the game, the enemy team having the Saipan. Now, if you've played against the Saipan, you'll be well aware that it is an annoyance at the best of times and a significant threat to your health all other times. So, Iron has got himself in a position to defend the cap from the east side of the map. And for the most part, it looks like the enemy team is really concentrating on pushing up that east side of the map. As you can see there, somebody with a smokescreen has laid a smokescreen there. That's probably going to indicate that that's the enemy destroyer laying a smokescreen so that his fleet can move closer to the cap. Looking at the minimap situation, Iron's team really isn't coordinating. They have a couple of ships heading off to one side of the map. Their carrier's not really doing much in the way of moving, and there are other ships that are, for the most part, like Iron himself, sitting inside their own cap. When you find yourself in a situation with a standard battle, you have to get out there, coordinate with your team, and split into 2 groups, a smaller group and a larger group. Now, the smaller group, if you run into the enemy's large force, your job is delaying action. Don't go in and YOLO and directly engage the enemy. Just kind of fall back, take shots at them, fall back, take shots at them, concentrate on the ships that you know you can cause significant damage to, and whittle them down one at a time. In the meantime, the opposite force, the larger force, can push around and try and engage the base, while a few of the heavier ships turn back around and come to support and defend you. If you find yourself on the small force, dealing with a small force, overwhelm them if you can, engage with them if possible, and push home any advantage that you have against that force, and start putting pressure on the enemy's base so that they're forced to break contact and head ships back there, so that your larger force will hopefully be able to continue pushing home the advantage. Iron has finally got himself a target in sight, and his first target up is going to be that Colorado. Now, of course, these are the British light cruisers, so they only have the semi-armor piercing, but I can tell you as a battleship captain, that semi-armor piercing does tend to peck away at you pretty hardcore. It's kind of like the Scharnhorst in that respect, that it's death by 1,000 cuts. Unless you're in a destroyer or another lightly armored cruiser who's giving broadside, you're going to have a bad time trying to get penetrations with these guns on something heavier. But now, Iron has got himself a wonderful target to shoot at, and that is a broadside Graf Spee. This is the exact kind of ship I'm talking about that has reasonable armor to deal with these shots, but not broadside on. Just look at the number of penetrations he's getting. Yeah, he's getting some ricochets, but the rate of fire there is so great that Graf Spee is really not going to have a good time of it. As you can see there, he's dropped him down next to no health here. And surprisingly enough, nobody else on his team is actually shooting at the Graf Spee, and the Graf Spee didn't seem particularly interested in recovering any of his ale. Now, he manages to secure a first blood, having done 33,000 damage, most of it to that Graf Spee there. And he moves himself forward. He's using the island here to cover himself. That's going to prevent the enemy ships that are pushing up and around here from getting shots onto him effectively, because they're going to hit those rocks, they're going to hit the trees, and it allows himself to move forward behind the cover of the island. Now he's putting shots out onto this Colorado, and you can see there shatters and ricochets. He's getting some over penetrations here and there. If you're in a British light cruiser and you find yourself up against an American battleship especially, aim for the bow if you can, because you're going to penetrate that bow armor. It is an all or nothing scheme here. Shots coming in there from that Colorado managed to mostly miss, and that is some real luck for RNGesus there, because I can tell you, if I was in the Colorado player, I would have missed those shots, but if it was me in the smokescreen, every single one of those shots would have landed and probably killed me outright, because that's just what kind of relationship I have with that particular deity. Now Iron goes ahead and he gets torpedoes out at that Colorado, but that Colorado's no fool. He's maneuvering hard here, and he's continuing to point his bow towards him. He's changing his speed, he's changing his direction, so he's going to prevent those shots from getting there. Now Iron has got himself a premium tier 7 payfast, and as you can see here, he's just putting the hurt onto that payfast as that payfast pushes up in broad daylight, no smoke screen there, and he's basically broadside on as well there. So shots out causes some significant issues, and remember that the payfast, or the Belfast as it is officially known, doesn't come with a heal. So if you find yourself shooting at that ship, remember, he's not going to be able to repair himself. Now, the Belfast does pop his radar there, and Iron moves himself forward. Again, this is what I was saying earlier. He's using that island as cover as he moves himself forward, and he's going to get out of the radar range, out of that radar situation. The enemy team is currently in the lead, and they're putting a hard push, a hard pressure push onto Iron's cap. That cap situation is resulting in his team kind of disintegrating, not really sure what to do, and they're pulling back away from the cap. So that's going to give the enemy team a significant advantage here. Iron starts getting shots off here at this Colorado, who's edging around that island there just barely. But remember, if you can shoot at them, they can probably shoot at you too, unless of course you're in Atlanta, in which case you could shoot at everybody behind an island. Now Iron moves forward here. He's popped his smoke screen, but his smoke screen's not active anymore, and he's actually going to move a little bit too far forward and end up outside of his smoke screen. This could be a very serious threat to him, because there's a hood back there, but there's also the Colorado, and let's not forget, there's also that Belfast that's back there too. And there, that hood's shots come in there, just barely missing him as he manages to back up into his smokescreen. Now, he does get into the smokescreen there. He does finish off that Colorado, and at this point, he's done about 100,000 damage. And he's earned himself a good number of kills. At least half the enemy team's deaths are the result of him. Now, the enemy team is still putting pressure on to their cap, and they still have their destroyer, and that could be a very serious problem. The Fiji does not come with radar. The Edinburgh at tier 8 does, but you have to give up something to have it. Instead, he's going to have hydroacoustic. It can be useful to some extent. Now, once again, Iron is detected, and that's going to be from the, more than likely, the Belfast there. He takes a big hit from the hood that manages to citadel him, but fortunately, British light cruisers, they come with that heal. Now, as long as he's sitting in his smokescreen here, he cannot see what's detecting him with that radar or that hydro, and it was definitely radar based on the fact that it's no longer detecting him. So that was probably going to be the Belfast. The ships that are being detected by friendly ships that are further downrange now. His smoke screen ends, he starts leaving. You can see the priority indicator there. He's being targeted by a couple of different people. And he's still trying to put shots down onto this hood as he's pushing up down the central channel. Right now would not necessarily be a bad time for him to make a run on the enemy cap, because the enemy is effectively 100% preoccupied in his cap, and there's nobody who's really in a position on the enemy team, aside from possibly the carrier, to come back and defend the cap situation. But he's going to continue to put shots down range on to this hood, because so long as he keeps doing that, he can keep resetting that cap. Of course, the enemy team is capping slowly, but they are getting reset, so that does tell me that there's probably one other ship that's in that cap with that hood, and that ship is more than likely the Belfast. Now, last we saw him, he didn't have a lot of health left, thanks to Iron here, and he's going to have to pop up sooner or later. Somebody's going to spot him. They're going to get in there, and they're going to push hard. The friendly team really does need to be focusing down this hood, because he's the lowest one. He's basically being forced to stay bow on to Iron, or give broadside, which is giving broadside to his friendly team, or turn bow on to the enemy and risk getting torpedoed by broadside. He is fast, though. He probably could have pulled it off earlier, but now, as you see here, he's starting to turn broadside on, and Iron's torpedoes are well out there. And of course, Iron now is going to be able to drop hot lead onto him, but it's going to be too little, too late for that battleship, as he gets nailed by torpedoes. And he really didn't have much option there, as he had 2 sets of torpedoes coming in. Iron does not manage to secure the kill on the Belfast. It's a little disappointing, but as you can see here, his team is trying hard to rally, but because their cap was held for the time it was, the enemy team is now up on points. Somehow, someway, though, his team is rallying, and they're holding it together, keeping the enemy teams equal to their own. But it always seems like every time they equal the teams lists, the enemy comes back and manages to kill yet another one. And of course, it's important to remember to pay attention to the teams lists here. The enemy team still has their aircraft carrier, while Iron's team doesn't. He's using the Fiji's guns to fire just over that island there, but just barely, not really enough to get a lot of damage in there. But then again, that Colorado also decided, nah, screw this, I'm out, and he turned around. You can see there the last known positions on the mini-map for the enemy show that the remaining majority of his team is actually on the opposite side of the map. They're out on the western side of the map there. So that could be an indicator that he's feeling very isolated and incredibly alone. But remember, there's also that destroyer that could be anywhere. Now, Iron does finally decide to make a run on the enemy base. Again, as I said, it's a really good opportunity for him to do this, because there's not really anybody in a great position to defend except the carrier. And the carrier is sitting over his aircraft, and he is spotting him. And the carrier's no fool. He knew that there was an enemy Fiji sitting in that channel. And as he comes around the headland of that island there, an enemy Furutaka pops up. Now, that Furutaka is full health, but he is a tier 5. He does have torpedoes, and he does have 8-inch guns, so with armor piercing loaded, he could potentially cause a significant hurt to Iron. Of course, what's the Furutaka do? He loads high explosive and turns broadside in order to give torpedoes. And this is going to let Iron close in and get his own torpedoes away. But more importantly, this means that this Furutaka is going to give him an opportunity to effectively wreck him with guns and then finish him off with torpedoes. Now, the enemy carrier is finally sending aircraft over to deal with the situation, and that's not a good thing for Iron, as he takes a big ol' hit there from the 8 dive bombers in that squadron. This is, again, remember, the Saipan, and those are tier 9 bombers, and they really put a hurt on him. He doesn't have defensive fire, instead choosing to take hydroacoustic so he could see destroyers, and in this particular case, so he could dodge those torpedoes the moment they went off of the enemy Furutaka. Though I'm not entirely sure that would have done him any good. He should have been able to see them anyway, and he did an excellent job spotting and defending against them. Now, he's got himself the enemy carrier in line of sight, and that carrier is trying desperately to run away. He does have a friendly battleship left on his team that's down there, and right now, Iron is giving broadside to that battleship. He is tunnel visioning in on this carrier. This is something that I absolutely do not recommend doing if you are in any ship. even if you have a 6-second reload, even if you have a 3-second reload, hit that shift key. Pull that camera back out and take a quick glance around with the free cam just to make sure that you aren't about to get deleted by an enemy battleship or a destroyer's torpedoes. However, that battleship gets taken out. Now, there was an opportunity here for Iron to actually try and get torpedoes off of that battleship. He could have done it pretty easily, I think. But instead continues to focus down this carrier, who is sending his aircraft back over. These are fighters, and I do believe the dive bombers may be there. Yes, they managed to hit him, but not enough to kill him. That carrier player is probably cursing thy name, RNGesus. How dare he not land reasonable hits. But you can see how well armored the Saipan is. It's basically a Baltimore heavy cruiser with a flat top on top of it, as a lot of Iron's shots are penetrating, but they're not finding that elusive citadel. Really difficult to citadel this carrier because of the armor that he's got. You really need slightly larger guns to do that kind of work, especially broadside on. But that carrier, very low health. And the enemy destroyer has popped up. The enemy destroyer managed to take out the Colorado, but the Colorado got his revenge and finished off the destroyer at the same time. So that just leaves the carrier left with 3 ships left, and that's the end of him. So good job, Captain's Iron. You managed to secure 220,000 damage in that game. You got yourself a Confederate, a devastating strike, a dreadnought for all the damage you took there, a Kraken Unleashed, a First Blood, and a high caliber. Of course, with such a repertoire of awards in a standard battle with no caps to go after, you would expect to be top of the team for XP earned, and that is exactly where Captain Iron is. Top of the team at over 2,000 base XP. Very good, sir. Thank you for submitting this replay. It showed some strengths, how to play in a situation like this, especially in a cruiser, and a couple of things that you might want to focus on in the future so you don't end up dead. Anyway, that's it for today's video, folks. If you like the video, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment down below. If you'd like to get semi-regular channel news and updates, you can do so by liking and following me on Facebook. If you'd like to help support me and the channel grow, as well as gain some additional perks, you can do so by becoming my supporter on Patreon. If you've got a replay like this one that you'd like to see featured on my channel, you can send it to my email. And if you'd like to watch me play various games live, you can do so by following me on Twitch. You can find the links for all of those in the video description down below. And as always, I'll see you next time. This is Captain Rye, signing off.